The Rams are one of the NFL teams that has relocated the most. They've played in 3 different cities throughout their history, but I have always been curious as to why they wanted to leave St. Louis. It is a die-hard football city. I mean, they are even managing to sell out UFL games. Clearly, it is a market that loves football and is willing to support a team financially that represents them. So today on FootballLore, I wanted to investigate just why the St. Louis Rams decided to relocate from St. Louis back to Los Angeles. The Rams got their start not in LA or St. Louis, but rather Cleveland. They were competing with the several teams for market share originally and were playing in the AFL. In 1937, just 1 year after being created, they ended up moving from the AFL to the NFL under the ownership of Homer Marshman and Damon Wetzel. The team was not competitive to say the least initially, and they went 1-10 their first season in the NFL. While this early history of the NFL was interesting, the team had to suspend operations in 1943 because a majority of the team, including the new owner, Dan Reeves, who had recently purchased the team, were drafted into the Second World War. In 1944, they came back, but stayed a mediocre franchise that was second-rate even in their city. The Browns were founded this same year, and the newfound competition did nothing to make Reeves comfortable with the financial position. Their last season in Ohio, they did manage to win an NFL championship, but by this point, the owner was set on moving the team to a less competitive market. When he went to the NFL to bring up moving the Rams to Los Angeles, the league initially said no. However, Reeves threatened to close the Rams altogether and get out of football if his request was not granted. The team was allowed to move after this threat and made the NFL the first coast-to-coast sports entertainment product in history. One condition to the Rams being able to play in the Los Angeles Coliseum was that they would have to integrate their team. The Rams agreed and signed Kenny Washington to their team in 1946. They followed this up by signing Woody Strode and were then preparing for the upcoming season. They were the first team to officially play full-time in Los Angeles. They had huge immediate success when their first game ended up having 95,000 people in attendance. The team finished their first season with a 6-4-1 record. In 1948, a halfback named Fred Gierke painted horns onto the Rams' helmets, which made it the first helmet emblem in pro football. It also became synonymous with their branding over the decades. They even ended up winning the NFL championship in 1951, thanks to performances from Norm Van Brocklin, Elroy Hirsch, and Tom Fears. The team was so popular that they were the first pro football team to have all their games televised. The Rams had a golden era through the 50s, but by the early 60s, they had the Los Angeles Chargers of the AFL as competition. The Rams didn't seem to notice, though. With an average attendance of 83,000 per game, they were so dominant that the Chargers actually relocated to San Diego rather than compete for the market. The team was not great through the late 50s and early 60s, and the fan support dwindled alongside their drop in performance. This turned around in the 60s with the appearance of the fearsome foursome. Rosie Greer, Merlin Olsen, Deacon Jones, and Lamar Lundy all made the Rams one of the best defenses in the league. They were so good during this era that in 1967, they became the first NFL team to have 1 million spectators through the course of their season. Roman Gabriel was a key part of this golden age of success too, and won the NFL MVP award in 1969. In 1972, a man by the name of Robert Irsay ended up purchasing the Rams for $19 million. He immediately turned around and traded his franchise to the Baltimore Colts owner, Carroll Rosenblum, for that franchise plus cash. The Rams under Rosenblum's ownership continued to thrive, winning 7 straight NFC West championships throughout the 70s and made it to the conference championship 4 times. In 1979, Rosenblum would perish in a drowning accident, and his widow inherited the ownership of the team. One of the first things she did was move the team from Los Angeles to Anaheim. After this, the Raiders moved to Los Angeles, and this forced the Rams to have to split their fan base with another team. Their new stadium was also smaller and meant less revenue from ticket sales. Their popularity in Los Angeles had a steep decline, especially because the Raiders won the Super Bowl in 1983 after just relocating to the city. They did have a resurgence in popularity when Eric Dickerson was drafted and set the NFL rushing record for a single season. However, they were only able to hang on to him for 5 years of his career. By 1995, the fan base in Southern California had all but dried up. They had been a laughingstock for half a decade, and they couldn't seem to figure out how to do anything right. The ownership blamed most of their situation on the lack of a state-of-the-art stadium to play in. Obviously, the stadium you play in has literally nothing to do with on-the-field performance, but it didn't stop the ownership from using it as a scapegoat. Orange County was in debt at the time and really couldn't afford to build a new stadium. The public support also wasn't there since they had been bad for some time. Most fans blamed the new owner, Georgia Frontier, for the new issues, but this blame made her decide to try to relocate the Rams to St. Louis. Initially, this vote was declined by the league owners, but Georgia replied by saying she was going to sue the NFL. A month later, a second vote was held and the Rams were set to move to St. Louis. This move included a new stadium and a city that was clamoring for football ever since their own Cardinals had relocated to Arizona. This move left many in the Los Angeles area bitter to the league as a whole. The city of St. Louis had just completed a brand new domed stadium that was the envy of the NFL. The Patriots had even attempted to move just to take advantage of the new facility. At first, the team would be playing at Busch Stadium while their dome was constructed. Eventually, the team brought on Dick Vermeil as head coach after the last coach ended up drafting Lawrence Phillips in 1996. They would trade their current running back, future Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis, to the Steelers, once drafting Phillips, who ended up being a huge bust. This put Vermeil in charge, and while the next two seasons were rough, 1999 brought new light to the franchise. In 1999, the Rams obtained Marshall Faulk and Trent Green to rebuild their offense. They also drafted Torrey Holt to beef up their receiving core. In the preseason, Trent Green blew out his knee, and an unknown backup by the name of Kurt Warner entered the game. After the game, Vermeil said the team was going to rally around Warner and play good football, but most assumed the team would end up with the worst record in football. Warner would go on to throw for over 4,000 yards and 41 touchdowns, and this combined with Marshall Faulk's performance led to their offense being dubbed the greatest show on turf. They finished 13-3 and marched through the playoffs to defeat the Tennessee Titans in the Super Bowl. After this season, Vermeil retired, claiming he had done everything he had wanted to achieve in the NFL. They went back to the Super Bowl in 2001, but would lose to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots at the start of their dynasty. At this point, fan support was huge in the city of St. Louis. Everyone loved their team and embraced them as a symbol of the city. However, from 2002 to 2014, everything would totally fall apart. First, they replaced Kurt Warner with Mark Bulger, who went on to lead the franchise for several years. From the years of 2005 to 2015, the franchise didn't make the playoffs a single time, and the fan support began to drop off as the team became one of the worst franchises in the league. They had several quarterback busts and started to seem like they couldn't make a good draft pick if it fell out of the sky. In 2010, the franchise was purchased by Stan Kroenke. He owned the Nuggets, Avalanche, and Rapids in Denver, and the NFL allowed him to purchase the team in St. Louis as long as he transferred the other sports teams to his son. In 2015, negotiations began to help update the Rams stadium to be more modernized. Part of the contract to bring the Rams to St. Louis was that their stadium had to be kept in the top 25% of all NFL stadiums. After nearly 20 years, the stadium had fallen into disrepair, and the city was supposed to rectify this with a huge facelift. There was no public interest to help pay for the stadium, and the city of St. Louis did not act in a way to make the Rams believe they would be moving forward with any work on the stadium. This allowed the team to break their lease at the end of the 2015 season, and they started to look for a location that would build a better stadium. St. Louis did end up making a proposal. When they got word the team might move, they were going to build a $1.1 billion stadium in St. Louis for the team. However, they wanted Kroenke to give $250 million of his own funds to the project. The ownership was not on board with this plan. Kroenke decided if he was going to have to build a stadium, he might as well pick a better market. He purchased 60 acres of land in Inglewood, California, and announced his plans to build a stadium on the site. This fueled rumors the Rams would be making a return to LA, who had lost all their professional football teams. In 2016, Kroenke officially filed with the league for approval to relocate to LA for the upcoming season. The vote was approved by the NFL, and the Rams relocated to LA in the 2016 season. This left the city of St. Louis without an NFL team for the second time, and they filed a lawsuit claiming financial damages from the broken lease. This was settled in 2021 with a final price tag of $790 million. Even now, whenever St. Louis teams play those owned by Kroenke, you can hear chants of F. Stan Kroenke through the stadium. The city really does love their football, and there was a serious sense of emptiness amongst fans in the city once the team relocated. The St. Louis area is so willing to support a football team that when they were awarded an XFL team in the form of the St. St. Louis Battlehawks. They proceeded to set the league record in attendance every season. They show up to these games by the tens of thousands, which is not something that any other XFL team can say. The city loves football, and it has made the Battlehawks the most financially successful XFL team to date. They play in the same dome the Rams played in, and it's not unusual for them to have more fans in seats than the Rams did at the end of their run. While the city is full of die-hard football supporters, it wasn't like they were going to endlessly support a team that wasn't actively trying to win games. Since moving to Los Angeles, the Rams have appeared in 2 Super Bowls and won 1. It seems like once moving to LA, they knew they had to become champions to really earn their place back in the hearts of their former fans. They are the second team in NFL history to ever move back to their original location after the Oakland Raiders moved to LA and back to Oakland before them. This immediate success was a bit of a slap in the face of the most die-hard St. Louis Rams fans who had supported the team through their mediocrity. The city of St. Louis had spent millions supporting a team that had no care to reflect their commitment with their on-the-field performance. I do feel like if the NFL ever decides to do another expansion, that St. Louis is really a market they should look into. I know the city has shrunk considerably from its peak in population, but I feel like it is still better than markets like Jacksonville. I feel like every time I make one of these videos about NFL teams relocating, it comes down to the city not being able to build a stadium for their team. If there is one piece of advice I could give to make sure your team doesn't end up leaving, I would say make sure their stadium is up to date. I do feel like when a new owner takes over, it can also be hard to keep a team in a location because the new ownership just simply isn't invested in the community in a way the older owner usually is. Like Kroenke, for example. He has his roots in Denver. He doesn't really care if people in St. Louis are happy with the state of their football team. He also doesn't care if they are upset if he chooses to move it. His main priority is using the football team as a way to make money. The move to LA made him the biggest team in the second biggest city in the country, and it also gave him a stadium that is worth several $billions. I don't think the Rams are going to be leaving LA anytime soon, but the hard truth is that there wasn't much keeping them in St. Louis. That is an explanation of why the Rams ended up leaving St. Louis. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to press the like button and let us know in the comment section if you learned something new. If you like football videos like this, we post 2 of them every week and are really trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So we would really appreciate a subscription if you like this type of content. Our last video was one about the 2007 New England Patriots and their downfall, so be sure to check it out.